In Yozora's reality, which we understand to be called unreality, it appears there is some sort of conflict going on that involves people snatching bodies and hearts, or something like that. In other words, it seems that people's identities are able to be mixed up in this reality, and it appears that both the Nameless Star and Yozora himself are victims of this. In my previous video, I covered the Nameless Star and how her true form might be being used by someone or something that may end up being a potential enemy of us. But in this video, I'm going to finally address something I've wanted to cover for a while now, and that's to do with Yozora's true form. Now, I will warn you, this isn't a theory I have all the evidence or explanations for. It's more just me throwing out some ideas and patching it together to try and form something, I don't know, halfway comprehensible. And this may be one of my most confusing videos so far, because I am telling you, this is certainly one of the most confusing and difficult topics I've had to address yet. But for better or worse, I'm going to try and do it anyway. So brace yourself for the confusion. So according to Yozora, the form we see him in isn't what he really looks like, and he asks Sora how did he recognize him as Yozora. So firstly, the person that is speaking to Sora, or perhaps it would be more accurate to say the heart that is speaking to Sora, does go by the name Yozora, which is why he wants to know how Sora knows his name, which also implies he's not aware of the video game in Toy Box that he's featured in, where he is also referred to as Yozora. This means that this specific form we are seeing, this Riku lookalike, whoever this is, it isn't what Yozora really looks like, unless Yozora does look like that, but from his perspective he looks different, because when he wakes up in his car he still has the same look, but that could just be because he's taken a different form, both in that dream sequence where he meets Sora, but also in the real physical world too. Now again, we don't know to what extent he means when he says this isn't what he really looks like. Is it just the body, or is it the clothes as well? When Terra became possessed by Xehanort, he donned the lab coat, and we know that wasn't Terra or Xehanort's original outfit, so it is possible after Yozora ended up in this other body, he also got a new outfit. But we're going to explore both of the possibilities here. So first of all, let's say that Yozora is wrong, and this is what he truly looks like, but he just sees himself as someone else. Maybe a bit similar to how Shion was seen differently depending on who was looking at her. But that still doesn't explain why when Yozora wakes up in his car, he looks exactly the same way that Sora saw him. Surely, if he sees himself differently, then when he woke up in his car, shouldn't we have seen him in the same way that he sees himself, right? But he still looks exactly the same. Also, wouldn't his driver, who we think is Luxord, wouldn't he notice how he looks? Or maybe he also sees him differently. To me personally, logically, it would make more sense that Yozora is probably correct, and this Riku lookalike form that we see him in isn't what he truly looks like. At least the body isn't. So following that logic then, I'm more of the belief that currently Yozora's heart is in this body, but the body itself belongs to someone else, which means we haven't seen what Yozora really looks like, just like he says. But also, that means the body we are seeing belongs to someone we don't know yet. Or at least it hasn't been revealed to us just yet whose body this is. Some people do say that it could be the Master of Masters' true body. I think that's an interesting suggestion. I'm not sure where I stand on it, but I'm throwing it out there for you guys just to consider. Now again, this is all assuming Yozora is correct and this form that we see him in isn't his actual form and it instead belongs to someone else. But even though I believe him, here's a potential issue with this possibility. His name being Yozora matches up with his similarities to Noctis from Final Fantasy 15 and Versus 13. And this form we see him in, whilst being similar to Riku, is also very similar to Noctis. And so far, there's been a lot of Versus connections to him, like Somnus playing in the Kingdom Hearts 3 secret ending, and the car scene literally being almost identical to the Versus 13 one with Noctis. So if he's right and this isn't what he really looks like, that means whoever this body originally belongs to is the person who actually looks similar to Riku and Noctis. But then who are they? And what's their name then? Because their name wouldn't be Yozora, and I do find it difficult to believe that Yozora has all these similarities to Noctis, including the name, where their meanings are very, very similar, which again is the name he identifies with. He says that, oh, how did you recognize me as Yozora? So we know he's going by the name Yozora. It's just that Yozora is telling us the form we see him in doesn't belong to him. But what I'm wondering is, why does he have the name Yozora, which is so similar to Noctis, if his true form isn't this, even though this form looks very similar to Noctis? It just doesn't add up. But maybe that's done on purpose. Maybe Nomura expects us to notice how similar the name Yozora is to Noctis in terms of their meaning, but he knows Yozora doesn't actually look anything like Noctis in his true form. But whoever this person whose body he's in is, that's the actual person that's like Noctis, but we just don't know who they are yet. And there is also the fact that this form, this body, has got two different eye colors, which is something that was actually originally planned for Noctis back in Versus 13 as well. So again, whoever this body originally belongs to, it's certainly meant to be similar to Noctis from Versus. We just don't know if Yozora is the original owner of this form or not. But if you were to take his words literally, then that would mean he isn't, despite the fact that his name Yozora is very similar to the name Noctis in terms of their definitions. I also want to bring up what the Nameless Star says.
He's been changed beyond recognition. His heart replaced with another's. But were he to regain his old self again, he would be distressed by my absence.
She says that Yozora has been changed beyond recognition. So what she's saying supports what Yozora is saying. Both of them are saying that he wouldn't be recognizable as Yozora. And she says, were he to regain his old self again, which implies that from the last she saw of him, he still hadn't regained his old self. I'm assuming that means his original form. So again, her words are also strongly suggesting that Yozora is right and this form we see him in isn't what he really looks like. Also, on the game box for Viren Rex, the tagline does say that you need to reclaim your heart, which matches up with what the Nameless Star says about Yozora having to regain his old self. So this strongly implies as well that this really isn't what Yozora really looks like. Following on from that, I want to discuss Yozora's outfit. I don't usually bring up clothes, but I'm going to do it in this case. Now, many people have already noticed by now the studded skull and crossbones symbol he has on his shoulder on his jacket, and there's been a lot of speculation surrounding that from ages ago. Now personally, I wasn't really sure what to make of it, but I looked into it more and it turns out that the symbol may be nothing more than just a play on the logo for Rowan, which is the clothing brand Nomura loves and is always wearing in real life, but also it's the brand that was used for the clothing in Final Fantasy 15. So whilst it may be a pair of crossed keyblades and a skull with a cross on it, that may just be a play on the brand's logo, which would make sense because again, Nomura does love the brand and it was already used in Final Fantasy 15 and Noctis had it on his clothes as well, just like Yozora. And again, Yozora and his world are clearly reimaginings of Versus 13. So this is yet another connection between Noctis and Yozora, down to even a logo on their clothes. And yet, Yozora would have us believe that this isn't what he really looks like. But maybe, you know, Yozora, after he got his new body, he took a little trip over to Rowan and, you know, he bought himself some new threads and, you know, maybe he just has the same style and taste as Noctis, you know. But again, that also implies he's similar to Noctis. But I don't know, maybe he literally just ended up in the body and he's wearing the same clothes that the original person who owns this body would wear. I don't know. Now, I'm not sure if you guys can see where I'm going with this, because again, I know it's a bit confusing, but just try to bear with me. It just seems to me, okay, that the similarities between this form that Yozora is in, even down to the fashion, is very similar to Noctis. But even though Yozora says he doesn't look like this, even his name is similar to Noctis. And again, he does go by that name. That's why he says, how did you recognize me as Yozora? And when he wakes up in his car, he looks exactly the same. And the driver, who may be Luxord, the driver acts normal, implying that there's nothing wrong with how he looks. Unless, of course, the commander that the driver is referring to is not Yozora, but instead the original owner of the body Yozora is in. Now, follow what I'm trying to say here. This would be similar to what I suggested in my previous video about the nameless woman having someone use her identity to masquerade as her. So basically, Yozora could be masquerading as this commander, and that commander, whoever they are, they're the one that looks similar to Noctis. That's the person who we're seeing. If that's the case, then whatever Yozora really looks like may be absolutely nothing like Noctis, and his name could just be to throw us off of that fact, which means what he really looks like might be some type of twist or something shocking. Either Yozora is wrong and he does actually look like this, meaning he somehow can't see himself clearly, but again, why would he wake up in his car and still look the same if he doesn't see himself like how we saw him? Or he's right and this ain't what he really looks like and he has taken over someone else's body. But how did that happen and why? Was it an accident or did it happen on purpose? It appears in the Nameless Star's case, her form and her heart were separated by someone on purpose. So that implies it can be done deliberately, but we don't know if that's the case with Yozora, or if in his case it was just an accident. You know, I do think it could be very interesting if he did do it on purpose, because it would be interesting if he is also trying to masquerade as this commander. And it's also interesting that the driver calls him commander but doesn't add a name to the end of it. Maybe Yozora really is masquerading as someone else. Maybe he's using this commander's identity. Or it might have just been an accident, but Yozora is just playing along as the commander for whatever reason. But if the Nameless Star's words are true, and Yozora's heart was replaced with another's, that means someone else is currently using his true form too for some reason, and that person would be this commander he switched forms with. But the Nameless Star said, were he to regain his old self, as if he lost his old self through means beyond his control. And again, the tagline for Viren Rex does say to reclaim your heart, so that also strongly suggests it was actually an accident. But if this is his actual heart as Yozora and just not his actual form, then shouldn't the tagline for the game be reclaim your form or something? Man, I don't know. My brain is overloading from this one. And to be honest, don't even get me started on the video game that ties into all of this and how that works. I don't even want to go there right now. But just to be clear on where I stand with this, I currently do believe Yozora is correct and that this isn't what he really looks like, meaning his name as Yozora might just be Nomura trying to throw us off. I think there's more evidence suggesting this isn't his true form rather than it is. Firstly, he says it himself, the Nameless Star says it, and the Viren Rex box heavily suggests it, so I'm going to go with that belief until more information is presented or the actual truth is revealed. This is 100% the most confusing thing I've tried to tackle so far, for sure. Anyway, that's all I've got for you on this one. You tell me what sense you can make out of it in the comments, if you can. No pressure if you can't, but I've got faith in you guys. I'm sure you guys can come up with some interesting ideas or cover some things I may have forgotten or not considered, so don't be shy, leave a comment saying it. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, and if you are new or you're not new and you just haven't subscribed yet, please be sure to subscribe, because I'm so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers, and when I do, I will finally be able to spam all of you with community posts and community polls, and it's going to be glorious. No, I'm joking, okay? But I'm kind of joking. But anyway, my name is NextGenNovelist, and that's all I've got to say, and I'm out. Peace.